If you're feeling dread about the upcoming holidays, you are not alone because surveys show that two-thirds of people actually feel stressed during the holidays. So, in this video, I'm going to talk about four main sources of holiday related stress and strategies to cope with it. Stay tuned. Welcome to Wellness with John. I'm John Peters, and these are resources to help you thrive. So, in today's video, I want to talk about holiday stress because this is a pervasive issue. In fact, if you look at surveys, about two-thirds of people report that they get more stressed over the holidays. And actually, when you kind of dive into the severity of that stress, it's pretty significant because if you look at, for example, people who have a mental health diagnosis, depression, anxiety, and things like that, about 40% of people say that the holidays make their symptoms somewhat worse, but about 40% say also that it makes it much worse, right? So the holidays really do present different types of crises for people, and it's not insignificant. And I think a lot of people struggle with this because, inherent in the nature of the intent of what we're going to do about the holidays and also how people are representing themselves, it's about joy, right? It's not about stress so much. And if you're on social media and you're looking at people's posts over the holidays, it's all shiny, happy people. And given that two-thirds of people actually find the holidays very stressful, this is bound to make you a little confused and, demoralized if you're sitting over there feeling a lot of dread or stress or not coping well with the holidays, and you might feel unusual. But in fact, 66 plus percent of people report that the holidays are actually more stressful than they are joyful. So, in this video, I want to talk about four domains of stress for people over the holidays. And so, stay tuned, and I'll give you some strategies to cope as well. So, one big domain of stress related to holidays is finances. And I'm not a financial advisor. I can't, help you straighten out your particular finances, except to say that, if we look out at sources of stress for people, finances always ranks high on the list. And holidays provide all these pressures, to buy gifts and to spend on celebrations and things like that. And, I would just say, be wise in thinking carefully about your budget because you know what money you have and you know what you can spend. I think in terms of not overspending, you have to try to cut down on impulse buys. So just don't put yourself at the stores as much. Don't do a lot of one-click buying on Amazon. So you have to plan your purchases, know your budget, decide, okay, this holiday season, I can spend X amount of dollars. I really can't spend more than that. And go ahead and decide that and limit yourself so that after the holidays, you aren't end up with a greater, debt burden, which is going to cause you more stress. Debt causes stress. It just works that way. So, um, unfortunately, inflation is high these days and things are more expensive. So, you got to walk a bit of a tightrope there, but just budget and avoid impulse buying. So, the second domain of stress is actually tied with finances if you survey people in terms of what the top stressors are related to the holidays, and that is interpersonal stress. And it kind of comes in two forms. And one, I think, is the main form for a lot of people is loneliness or social isolation, but also very common is conflicts with family members or people that you have to associate with and be in contact with over the holidays. So let me talk about those in turn. So, unfortunately, social isolation is a pervasive issue in our society, and loneliness and social isolation are both miserable for people, but also not conducive to good mental health and good physical health, unfortunately. One way to think about this is that if you are going to improve your connectedness to a good social group, That may be somewhat of a long game that extends out beyond these holidays. So, what I mean by that is that, ideally you wouldn't be so isolated over the holidays because you would have established ongoing relationships with people that you could rely on for good contact during times like the holidays. But that may not happen between now and when the upcoming holidays actually happen. This is somewhat of a long game. So, what I tend to recommend to people is look for opportunities to be social, even if it seems a bit marginal in terms of how rewarding it's going to be, because maybe, you go volunteer somewhere, or you go to an event, or you hang out with some people who you aren't really particularly close to. You're going to get some gratification in terms of social connection rather than just being a hermit and isolating yourself, even if those opportunities don't necessarily represent the long term solution to your overall issue of being more isolated than you want to be. Now, one way that this shows up for people often, I think, when I talk to people in my practice, is that often people are estranged from particular family members and they really would like those relationships to be different. They would like to have opportunities to hang out with particular family members, and yet those relationships have become wonky and there's estrangement. And again, unfortunately, you may not be able to fix that before the upcoming holidays. If you're going to improve those relationships, it's probably more of a long game that's going to extend beyond this next set of holidays. So I do have empathy for the grief that is associated with, estrangement from family members, because I talk to lots of people who report this and I give support to people who deal with that. But, again, if you can uh, decide to have some social support, right? If you implode because you're estranged from so and so or this group of people, and then you don't take care of yourself over the holidays, that's not going to instrumentally help improve those relationships. It's going to make you more miserable. So, in the short term, look for ways to have meaningful social interactions. I get that it may not be the ideal thing that you would want to have happen if you could be less isolated or if you were not estranged from your family members. But some of those issues, again, are part of a long game for you and may not feasibly and quickly be solved before the upcoming holidays. And yet you need to be able to get through the holidays and not be too miserable, right? Now, in terms of conflicts with family members, this is a very, very common issue. And so I would say, just in my non scientific survey of the top thing people complain about related to the holidays, is having to spend time with family members that they don't really want to associate with, or in settings that they just don't really enjoy, that are social settings. And so, again, part of my advice is uh, consider, improving those in the long run as maybe a set of different strategies than how you're going to cope with them in the short term. I think the most common strategy that works for people in the short term is boundaries. So when we are in a conflicted relationship, and this is true when we're not talking necessarily about holiday stress, but in conflicted relationships, the most immediate thing that gives you the surest handle on control over the relationship is boundaries. And I'm not saying that boundaries are the only type of strategy that we use in order to navigate complicated relationships, because if it was, then we would all be isolated because we would just be cutting everybody off. But I am saying that, reasonable boundaries do give you some sense of control over how much you're going to expose yourself to the misery of particular relationships or particular social settings. So boundaries for some people end up being, just excusing oneself from the holiday party to go take a walk around the block, or limiting how much time one's going to spend at an event and bowing out early, right? It's better to bow out early and miss part of it, or have people, be a little frustrated with you for not staying the whole time, than staying the entire time and getting overwhelmed and then having additional conflicts that might provide more toxicity, right, to the situation. So boundaries are the main type of strategy that people can use in the short term to be able to limit how much toxicity is coming in from negative situations around interpersonal conflict in families and social settings around the holidays, right? Now, I have worked with a lot of people who have practiced my stress reduction techniques related to having to spend time with people over the holidays, and they've had good success because one of the things is when you're in a setting, you're going to get increasingly stressed, and you might have spikes of stress if you have difficult and challenging moments. But if you are able to rewire your stress system and learn some strategies to de stress in the moment, you're going to be less miserable and cope more effectively with those challenges. So, if you're interested in my stress reduction mastery course, which will teach you those techniques, which are easy to learn, easy to practice, and give quick results, I'll put a link down in this description below. You can go check out the information about that. The good news about that program is it's 100% guaranteed because it works. And I've taught it to thousands of people and it actually works. So if you take it and it doesn't work for you, I'll just give you your money back. Okay. So anyway, interpersonal stress is a big source of stress for a lot of people over the holidays. And one bit of advice that is generally true, regardless of the type of holiday stress you're experiencing, but this I think pertains in particular to interpersonal stress, is be very moderate with your alcohol and drug use, especially alcohol. Alcohol tends to not make things go better. It's easy to cross the threshold into being intoxicated enough that your filters go out the window, or you're more likely to be hostile. You might be more labile, and other people are maybe drinking at the same time. So, just regardless of the source of your holiday stress, keep your alcohol and drug use moderate to low because more of that is probably not going to make things better, right? So another domain of holiday stress for people is dealing with grief. And this is a particular issue for a lot of people because a lot of people are experiencing the first set of holidays after a loss. And that can be extra challenging because not only are you feeling the sense of loss around the holidays because you've had the person in your life and the way that you've connected with that person has also included holiday celebrations. And now you're encountering the holidays without them. And this is certainly going to be a source of sorrow. But I think the first time that people encounter the set of holidays after a loss, it's extra stressful on people because they're not sure how bad it's going to be. They're not sure if they're going to be overwhelmed. They're not sure what they need to do to take care of themselves. And so when I talk with people who are going through the first year of grief, I often say, you know, leave things flexible for yourself because when you do get, let's say, to a Christmas celebration or a Thanksgiving celebration, the reality is you might find in the middle of that that you do need to do something to take care of yourself, like leave the situation, go home, or change something, or get some extra immediate support from a friend or something like that. You really can't 100% pre-plan, which is why there's this confusion. But I will tell you that most of the time, the anticipatory stress that people have worrying that the holidays are going to be really bad because of being in a grief process and experiencing the holidays for the first time, most of the time when people actually get to like the Thanksgiving dinner or the Christmas celebration or whatever it happens to be, usually they cope much better than they worried about. Okay. It's reasonable to worry about not coping, but if you're worried about not coping, then the answer is get some things in place that can give you support if you're feeling more burdened by your sorrow. If you're, of course, needing careful planning around that, or you need some support around your grief, talking to a therapist is a really good idea, especially during the first year of adjusting to a major loss in your life. I think talking to a therapist is a very, very good idea, and I encourage you to consider it if you're not already connected with a therapist. Certainly, regardless of your situation, if you're seeing a therapist, don't ditch the therapist during the holidays, at least for too long, because again, that's removing a type of support that's already in place for you. I know some people get busy. Sometimes people actually feel so depressed that they don't feel like going to therapy, but I encourage people, just keep the therapy going, even if you have to change the cadence of your appointments. Because if you've got a therapist in place, then you really don't want to reduce your supports during a time of elevated stress, right? So, I've made other videos on grief, and if you look at my playlist on this channel, you'll see I've got a playlist of several videos if you want to go look at some broader discussion of coping with grief. But in any case, I have noticed that the first year of grief after a loss is challenging, and in particular, the points where it's most challenging tend to be over the holidays. So the last domain that I want to talk a little bit about that comes up and related to holiday stress, it's a very common one, is the issue of divorce, and especially the issue of divorce where you have children. And this comes up for me in my practice a lot, partly because I specialize in helping people cope with divorce, but also on average, 1.2 million parents separate in the United States every year. So a lot of people are separating or separated at the time that the holidays come up. And like I was saying with grief, a lot of people are stressed out because they're having to go through lots of major adjustments. And then there's the added stress of the holidays. But also, for a lot of people, they're encountering the holiday season for the first time after their separation. So, again, number one, it may not be as bad as you think. If it is as bad as you're worried about, get some extra support. But the other thing that I tell, uh, especially divorcing parents, is that one of the stressors that people report to me is that they're confused and challenged and stressed about trying to figure out, okay, we got divorced, we got separated, and now the holidays are coming up, and we got to figure out how we're going to do holidays as a separated couple. And what they're thinking about is they're thinking way out into the future, like for the rest of our kids' lives while they're young. But you really don't have to burden yourself to try to solve all of the complexities related to committing to doing holidays a particular way. So you can ease some of your stress if this is your situation. If you are a separating parent, especially, but if you're a divorcing person too, you actually don't have to do the future holidays the ways that you're going to do this particular set of upcoming holidays, because this set of holidays is a new set. It's an experiment. It's a learning experience. You haven't encountered this before. It's a new situation. And so if we burden you for having to commit to how you're going to do all of those future sets of holidays before you've even encountered this first set of holidays after your separation, you just don't have enough data. Okay. So what I encourage parents to do is say, we'll have a provisional plan for this set of holidays, knowing that after we get through the holidays, we'll have more information because we'll see how all of that goes. And when we see how it goes, that will inform our wise decisions about how we do the subsequent holidays after that. Okay, that's the best attitude I think that you can have, because otherwise you haven't encountered the holidays as a separated family, and you actually don't know how all that's going to work, right? And it's going to stress you out, partly because you're thinking, oh, we have to make it work this way, and we're now kind of locked into making it work that way forever, and maybe it'll suck and it's not the best way. And so you really don't need to make that kind of gamble before you get better information, and you're going to get better information in this set of holidays. So do this set of holidays however works, okay? And maybe it's not ideal, but you'll learn by going through it. And then after the holidays, you'll have much better knowledge about how to plan for the next set of holidays as they come up the next year, okay? So I hope this is helpful. If you like this kind of content, hit the like button below. If you have yet to subscribe to my channel, please subscribe to my channel. And I'll end the video with just a bit of general advice, regardless of what type of holiday stress you're under. Number one, try to get good sleep, because if your sleep gets wonky, you're going to perform worse, okay? Number two, keep alcohol use moderate to low to none, and you will perform better, all right? Get some decent physical activity, because regular daily moderate physical activity definitely helps us deal with stress. Okay. Consider boundaries with people who you're finding challenging over the holiday season. I'm not saying cut people off, but give yourself permission to limit in some reasonable ways your exposure to challenging types of situations, and you'll be better off, and so will the other people, right? Um, and consider seeing a therapist if you're really feeling challenged with this upcoming set of holidays, or if at some point during the holidays you are. We're generally available during holidays. Most of us don't take the holiday season off. And the other thing is, just realize that, as I said, 2/3 of people report that they're more stressed. So even if you're not particularly stressed, there's a 100% chance that you're absorbing stress from people around you, because 2/3 of the people you're closely connected to and that you're going to associate with over the holidays, they're stressed too. There's a lot of stress that goes around. And yet, again, what we represent is the shiny, happy version of the holidays in terms of what they're supposed to be and how we report on them. But the reality is, holidays are stressful. So you're not weird. You're not alone. You're actually in the majority if you're finding the holidays stressful. And yet you can cope if you follow some of this advice. So I hope this is helpful. And thanks for taking time to join me on the channel today. And I will see you in an upcoming video.